Hey guys, Tiffany Ofili Porter here, where I discuss all things life after sport. This video is going to be the 5 potential downsides or cons to having sister locks over a long period. Now, I have had my locks for going on 7.5 years, and although I absolutely love the style, the versatility, and all of the positives that come along with having locks, I do think it's important for someone to understand what they're getting themselves into and what the downsides can be with having locks over time. That's the key, because some of the issues that I might experience after 7.5 years might look very different than what I'm experiencing at 7 months. So if this video sounds interesting, make sure you continue to watch.
Balancing motherhood with medals on her chest. She's proven that greatness knows no rest, representing the countries with pride she stands.
So it kind of goes without saying that I am a fan of locks. So I just want to kind of give a disclaimer that I'm in no way, shape, or form downplaying or bashing Sisterlocks, because I mean, I wouldn't have them in my head otherwise. But like I mentioned in the introduction, I do think it's important to just know what you're getting yourself into. And with any long-term permanent hairstyle, there are going to be some things that you need to keep in mind, especially if you are considering getting locks, if you're new to your lock journey, or if you're a seasoned lock person like me and you kind of have been going through some of these things, know that you are not alone. So I did jot down some notes here that I will refer to just to make sure that we stay on track. This is going to be a quick video. Number 1, over time, you can experience thinning or breakage with your locks. Now, this is particularly evident for a lot of people around the crown or edges of your locks. And why this happens is because over time, repeated retightening and the weight of matured locks can cause tension and stress on your scalp. Now, there are ways to prevent this, and obviously the best remedy for any issue is prevention, to just never have the issue in the first place. So ways that we can prevent this is making sure that your establishment was done by a trained and skilled sister loctician, and your retightnings as well, because they'll be able to identify any issues. They'll be able to know the way to kind of go that 4-point or 3-point rotation, depending on how they're doing your retightenings. And if any issues do arise, they'll be able to kind of nip it in the bud before they become big issues. Now, another thing is kind of avoiding product buildup that can also cause a lot of weight on your locks. It is natural as they get longer and fuller that they are going to weigh a little bit more than when they're shorter or, baby locks. But if they are done properly, by design, that is not meant to be an issue if they are kind of following what the traditional Sisterlocks protocol is. So like I mentioned, it usually shows around the hairline, nape, or crown of your head, because that tends to be like where your hair is maybe a little bit more fragile. So that is definitely something to consider when, you are talking with your loctician. Just, discuss with them, like, how is the state of my hair? How is it looking? Because the result of this can, the thinning or the even balding in certain areas, if they're not managed properly, and nobody wants to experience that, especially when they can be very easily avoidable. So similar to the thinning and breakage, you can have lock bunching, slippage, or inconsistencies. Now, let me give you an example. When you're looking at a lock that is healthy and, kind of the way that it's supposed to be, from start to the tip of the lock, you kind of want to see that uniformity. It is meant to be the same thickness all the way through. Okay. And if you're finding that in certain areas, you might have like a thin area, a thick area, a medium area, that is not ideal. That is what we call bunching. And in the early stages can lead to slippage, which is essentially your lock kind of coming out of the lock. Now, for me, who's been in the game for 7.5 years, slippage is not necessarily something that I experience because my locks are mature, they are secure in that lock. However, the bunching and the inconsistencies are possible if you go to somebody for your retightnings who does not necessarily know what they're doing, or if they're doing that 3-point rotation in the exact same direction. Because when you're doing the retightening, I've had a whole series on here with my loctician where she comes on and dispels myths and just educates us about sister locks. If you haven't seen those videos, make sure that you do. But when a loctician is doing your retightenings, they take their tool and go in different directions with every pass as they're doing the retightening. And this helps to prevent some of those issues. So after many years, the locks can age unevenly, like I said, if they're not maintained properly, especially if your hair texture varies across your your scalp. Now, a lot of us, myself included, tend to have a little bit finer hair around the crown and nape, like I mentioned, and a little bit coarser in the back or the middle area. And that is why around those finer haired areas, you can have a little bit more vulnerability, and that's where you tend to have the more problem areas, because the locks might not be as strong as they are in the middle. So, any good loctician is aware of that and knows how to adjust accordingly. And the long-term effect of that is that some locks may look thin, they might bunch, like I mentioned, and they might develop weak spots, especially if the pattern was inconsistent in the early days. Now, I mean, this might be arguable, but it's my opinion that when you are considering getting locks, maybe if it's not that important for you to go to a certified loctician for your retightenings, I certainly do think it is important for you to go to a certified consultant, trainee, master loctician for your establishment, because that establishment is going to serve as the base of your locks, the foundation, and it's going to ensure that you're kind of setting yourself up for success in the long term. Now, somebody who might not necessarily be certified can probably, if they know what they're doing, maintain your locks, but to establish them without a sister loctician doing that initial establishment or install, one could argue that they're not technically even sister locks without that piece. So the result is that, sometimes with those inconsistencies, that especially in the early days, it can cause you to need to repair locks, combine locks to maintain a more uniform look. And sometimes when you get into that combining of locks, you can start to mess up your grid pattern and kind of just decrease the integrity of your sister locks altogether. So that is the first con that I want you guys to consider. Like I said, easily preventable, but still something that some people do experience when they have sister locks, especially long term. Number 2, retightening fatigue. Now, I feel like I've talked about this so much on this channel, to be honest with you, but in case this is your first video that you stumbled upon, hey girl, hey, that I want you to know you have to go get your sister locks retightened every 4 to 6 weeks. There are some people whose hair might grow a little bit slower and they can get away with every 8 weeks, but for the most part, the recommendation is to get those regular maintenance appointments every 4 to 6 weeks. This is essential to maintain the structure and the health and the integrity of your sister locks. Now, that's a commitment, right? If you're not somebody who can DIY it yourself, which that comes with its own issues because that can cause physical strain. That's a time commitment. You might save money from not having somebody else do it, but it still comes with its own, level of stress, if you will, from having to do those retightening so regularly. But after 7 years, that time commitment and cost, more on that in a bit, if you are going to a consultant, especially because they tend to be a little bit pricier than somebody who's not as certified in sister locks, that can become exhausting. And that can become a big con for some people. For me, I knew what I was getting myself into. I committed to it. It's not a big deal. If anything, my loctician and I have a good old time. I use it as a little bit of a self-care appointment away from my kids. We talk about stuff. We watch videos, watch movies, and it's a good time for me. So that's not necessarily an issue for me. But for somebody who might not necessarily have that time currency, that might be something that you have to consider before you get your locks. And the result of this is that some people might just grow tired and they might become lax with their maintenance routine, and that can lead to the matting and lock damage that we mentioned earlier. Again, it's kind of all intertwined. If you want to ensure that your locks are flourishing, you need to make sure that you go to these regular appointments with somebody who knows what they're doing that can prevent them from decreasing their beauty. So all of these things need to be considered. All of these factors really do matter. Number 3, there can be a limited number of trained, skilled practitioners or locticians of sister locks now, or consultants or trainees, or just people who have perfected the art of doing sister locks. Now, I have a loctician in Michigan, I have one in Ohio, and I now have one in Kansas City. However, when I first moved to Ohio, in between, that transitional period for me, going from one loctician to another, I did find that there weren't that many locticians in the Cincinnati metropolitan area that were, first of all, certified, and more importantly, accepting new clients. Many of them who I called, because you can go on the registry on sisterlocks.com to see what locticians are available in your area. When I would call them, they're like, oh yeah, I do sister locks, but I'm not accepting new clients, which to me was mind blowing. So I'm like, how booked and busy could you actually be to not want this money? But hey, it is what it is. I ended up finding a woman, Jessica, shout out to her. She's amazing. Wasn't necessarily on the Sisterlocks registry, but did amazing work. And she and I still are Facebook friends, and she does great sister locks. But definitely something for you to consider, that, Sisterlock consultants are not available in every city or country or county or location. So, if you are someone who moves around a lot or someone who's not really sure where they're going to be, definitely something to consider. Look on that registry, make sure that there are locticians who are certified in Sisterlocks. And if not, then maybe go the micro locks route. Maybe start looking on Facebook for micro locks locticians who are accepting new clients. That might broaden your, registry of people who can do your hair. Now, what people sometimes do overlook is that when you move, or if your consultant becomes unavailable, it can be hard to find a replacement. Now, remember, I told you I had one girl in Cincinnati. I didn't have another one. So if she up and decided to move with her family, I would kind of be back to square one. And that poor maintenance over time, if you're not continuing up with those retightening appointments, and if you just go to any old body who says they can do Sisterlocks, poor maintenance from an untrained practitioner can lead to the damage of your locks. Again, all of these things are in fact connected. So essentially, you do have a little bit of a dependency on a consultant, especially if you're not someone who, I'm definitely not this person, who can DIY it yourself or have the capability or the desire to do so. You are going to have to become dependent on your consultant and their availability and their pricing. Say, for example, I pay $170 right now for my retightnings. Back in Michigan, I think I was paying like $110. Cincinnati was $120, but that came with the pipe cleaner set that she would install. Here, it's more expensive. Times have changed. The economy is different. The state that I'm in is different. So certainly something that you need to consider, that this can be stressful if your loctician does move, if they retire, or if they overbook. Number 4, the cost over time. Remember, I said I was going to come back to this. Now, but beyond the initial install, again, I've actually done a very elaborate and detailed video on the cons of Sisterlocks in general, because the cost can be prohibitive, whether you're in 7 months or in 7.5 years like me. But over time, it does kind of compound, because every 4 to 6 weeks, you're paying $170. You can do the math. It's going to add up over time. For me, it's very worth the investment. For somebody, that might be considered a huge downside. That might stop them from getting the locks in the first place. So between the retightenings and then the repairs, because a lot of times locticians do charge by the hour. So if you have lots of repairs that your loctician needs to do because you were going to an untrained professional before, that's going to take longer for your appointment, which is going to cost you in the long run. So again, all of these things are connected, and over time, this can be thousands of dollars if we are being real. I mean, it's been 7.5 years for me. You can do the math, like I said. So it can be comparable to like a salon relaxer visits or high-end protective styling. Now, for me, the versatility, the beauty, the authenticity of this being my own natural hair, and all of the positives that come along with Sisterlocks far outweighs this particular con for me, but for somebody else that might not be the case. And I do think it's my duty here to kind of just shine light on Sisterlocks in their entirety, which includes the downsides of them. So definitely something to keep in mind. Number 5, the styling limitations or boredom can be a thing for some people. Now, for me, this one particularly is not a con at all. In fact, since having my Sisterlocks, I do more hairstyles. I have, by nature of how Sisterlocks are created, you have that grid pattern. So you have the flexibility to part your hair, to do an updo, a twist out, get them in curls, wear them straight, wear them middle part, side part. Just pretty much for me, all of the styles that I used to do with my loose natural hair, I do now and then some with my Sisterlocks. However, for some people, I will say Sisterlocks, even though they are more versatile than your traditional locks typically, just because of the way that they are designed, the long-term wearers may feel restricted over time. And that is some people's reality. Now, you might have what they call limited freedom to change your style. So if you're somebody who likes to wear a short pixie cut wig one day and then a 28 middle part bust down, straight weave the next day, and then, curly hair the following day, then in that regard, yes, you might argue that it is a little bit limited, because as your hair gets longer and fuller, the braids that usually serve as the foundation for a wig or a weave might be a little bit thicker and your wig might not necessarily lay the way that you want it to lay. Again, that's not an issue for me. I haven't worn a wig since 2019 and I have no plans on doing so anytime soon. Not that I'm judging the girlies who wear wigs, sis. I'll be seeing some cute ones, do you? You know, we're all beautiful in our own way, just definitely not my vibe anymore. But again, that's something to consider if you're somebody who does like to change their hair a lot like I was. I was somebody who changed their hair so often that a lot of my girlfriends were like, Sisterlocks, are you sure you're gonna really like this? And I'm like, trust me. And now I couldn't even imagine my life without them. So if you like the ability to wear your loose natural hair, if you switch between braids and twist outs or other unlocked styles regularly, then sometimes if you want to do that, you know, this is a permanent hairstyle solution. It might require cutting off your locks or trying to comb out your locks, which can be tedious and even damaging to your hair. It's something that many locticians don't even recommend. If you want to change your locks at any point, they usually just say, just cut them off and start all over. And I don't necessarily see that being something that's going to happen in my future, but I also know in life, I never say never. But as of right now, where I am in my life, I love my locks. I'm trying to get them down to butt length, you know, like down to my back. They've come a long way. In fact, this is a 2-week-old braid out right now that I'm rocking, and I'm just loving the waved look that it gives me. Back to that versatility that I mentioned before. But definitely for some people, they might not think it's versatile enough. So again, something for you to consider, especially over time, like myself, who's now had them for 7.5 years. So the long-term effects of this is you might desire for a change, like a different color, which you can color Sisterlocks. You can probably even see that at the tip of my locks, I do have a different color because I used to have like platinum blonde locks back in the day. But you might desire that loose, natural look. You might even desire unlocked hair, and over time, this desire can grow stronger. So definitely something to consider. And the result of that is that some people eventually just decide to cut or transition out of Sisterlocks for a new look. And like I said, I don't think that's going to be me anytime soon, but you know, if that's something that could potentially be in your future, I do think it is important to consider that before you take the plunge of getting those Sisterlocks. So let me know, guys, if you want me to do a part 2 on this video on tips to how to prevent or manage these issues after long-term wear. Because like I mentioned before, what some of the issues you might experience early on in your lock journey can look a little bit different as you are wearing them for longer periods of time. And I'm here as a resource. I've said it so many times. I love creating videos to help the girlies because I myself watched these videos before I got my locks. I even still to this day refer to YouTube to help me answer questions. So let me know down in the comments if there's anything that you think I could have covered more. If you do want that part 2, if there's any con on hair that could be prohibitive for you getting Sisterlocks yourself, or if you just want to say what up though in the comments. Like I said, I do respond to everybody, but I hope this video was helpful, and thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share it with somebody else who might find it interesting. And until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video. Peace.